knows how you come across somebody once in a while you shouldn't have messed with? That's me.
I am not an African American.
You're Oreo cookie, white in the inside and black on the outside.
I don't have an afro, I have an Amerifro.
Talking that idiotic stuff you talk about, I will slap you.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Black at the ace of spades, but 100% American.
Heard around the world by everybody and their mama. The Jesse Lee Peterson Radio Show.
No African here. No. I don't have an afro. I have an Amerifro. I have with me one of the smartest white women on this side of heaven. They don't make them like this. She should run for president. Ann Coulter is with me, my friend. She's an eight-time New York Times best-selling author, as well as the legal correspondent for Human Events and a syndicated columnist for Universal Press Syndicate. Her brand new book, Mugged, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to the Present. Ann, good morning. Welcome to the show.
It is an honor to be here.
I'm telling you, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, and thanks for being a friend.
Oh, it's so great to talk to you. You are the best, and talk about courage.
You know, Ann, congratulations on this book. You did it again. But first, let me ask this. I thought about this all night, and I wanted to ask. A lot of white Americans are afraid of the word racism. And so over the last 20 years or so, and maybe longer, but definitely 20-some years, they have allowed the race hustlers, the poverty pimps, the so-called civil rights leaders and liberals to get away with bringing the country to what it is today. I want to know from you, as a white woman, where did you get your courage from? You're not afraid of anything.
Yes, and particularly in the case of charges of racism, I'm not a racist. So, you may as well call me a green person. I always wonder about these white people who seem to see racism every place, like every host on MSNBC. It's much like, liberals always tell us that these conservative religious types who are obsessed with homosexuality and constantly, reviewing homosexual pornography to stamp it out, well, that's just proof that they're secretly gay. Well, I think people who see racism every place are, in their hearts, racist. I don't have anything in my soul to be embarrassed about, nor my party. A point I make in this book, Mugged. Republicans should be proud of our history on civil rights. Democrats should be hanging their heads in shame. But to avoid ever being embarrassed about anything, liberals have simply rewritten the history of race relations in this country.
And I've noticed that since Obama has been in the White House, it has gotten worse instead of getting better. When President Bush was in the White House, 30% of black Americans thought that this country was a racist society. Now 50% believe it. So it got worse instead of getting better.
Oh, yes, and that was the point of my emergency pre-election book, which is to say that this racial bullying from white liberals, that's mostly where it comes from, whom, as I say, I believe are secretly racist themselves, and that's what they're trying to cover up and make up for by accusing others of racism. Yeah. It's really gotten worse since Obama's president, not because liberals care about the historic nature of the first black presidency. Why didn't they say it would be racist to vote against the confirmation of Clarence Thomas? Oh, no, that would prove nothing to young black children. No, it's because Obama is the most liberal president we've ever had, and they can attack his critics by calling them racist.
In your book, Mugged, you talk about O.J. Simpson in that when that trial happened and it turned out in the manner that it did, O.J. got away, a lot of white folks kind of got over that fear, and things started to get better for blacks as well.
Yes. Weirdly enough, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to black Americans, and that was the most watched court event in world history. I mean, Little Court TV, a cable station, was getting ratings like the Super Bowl. So all of America was watching when that verdict was released, majority black jury, by the way, 100% Democratic jury, and then seeing black law students at Howard Law School, a very esteemed law school, cheer that verdict just overnight. It just snapped. It was like you had a subway card and it didn't open the turnstile anymore. The white guilt bank was shut down.
Yeah.
Hope OJ was worth it. And it was the best. It was one of the best things that happened to America and one of the best things that ever happened to black Americans. Suddenly, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton weren't the only black spokesman anymore. Republican policies on crime and welfare were finally pushed through. They had been blocked for decades with Democrats saying, "Oh, law and order, that's a code word for racism." No, we actually believed in law and order. And when Giuliani implemented it and Reagan and Bush judges implemented it, suddenly you had tens of thousands more blacks alive, not murdered.
That's right. I remember that. Your book is not about, and you made this clear on The View, and I want to ask you about that. It's not about black people. It's about what the liberals have done to them.
Absolutely. It's about white liberals keeping everyone on edge. They do have a history of race relations to be embarrassed about, but it's all about their self-esteem, looking in the mirror at themselves and thinking, I am the one non-racist American. All the rest of you are racist. I call it a mea culpa as opposed to a mea culpa when they go around announcing America is a racist society. You know, they don't mean them. They mean you.
Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, some of the stories in this book, you will learn about a lot of black heroes whom liberals have hidden from us.
Yeah.
Because liberals want to celebrate the cop killers, the Mumiyas. They celebrate the gangster rappers. These heroic black people in various of these little vignettes I tell at the beginning. I mean, that black Muslim at the Farrakhan Mosque, where they ambushed cops at the beginning of the John Lindsay administration here in New York. It was a horrible, horrible story. The Lindsay administration, again, white liberals, totally backed down, apologized to Farrakhan for cops responding to a 911 call, and a few years later, a very sweet black Muslim in the mosque is arrested on some small credit card charge, but he keeps telling the truth. Everything he's asked, he tells the truth. He ended up testifying against his fellow black Muslim who killed the cop and instantly had to, change his name, go into witness protection program. That's an heroic story. Why isn't there a movie made about him? Or how about probably someone you know, the minister in L.A. who had been a pimp, became a Christian minister, and he ran out into the middle of the L.A. riots, threw himself on top of an Hispanic man who was about to be murdered, and said, if you kill him, you're going to have to kill me first. That's an heroic story. Why do we not have movies about them? No, we have movies about the cop killers and the criminals.
So is this happening because they want to keep the people in an brainwashed, unconscious state as to what's really going on?
Oh, yes. Liberal policies have been such a disaster for black Americans, beginning with the Jim Crow laws, all Democratic enforced, and then straight into the Great Society programs. As you know, and probably your listeners have heard from you, the black marriage rate was higher than the white marriage rate up until the Great Society programs.
Yeah. As you know, I talk about this a lot. I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama. I remember the Jim Crow laws. I went to a movie theater once, and blacks had to sit in the balcony, and we could not sit downstairs with white Americans. But I was okay with that, Ann, because we had a better seat. We had better view. But yet, black Americans, they got married. If there were problems in the family, they would not go to the government. They would help one another. I did not know about abortions until I became an adult and moved to the city, because if they had abortions, we were not aware of them. Out of wedlock birth, there was a sense of embarrassment about having children out of wedlock. You would have to have a shotgun wedding. All of that is gone now as a result of the liberals. Yes, it's really amazing if you look at how black people were progressing by leaps and bounds, even coming out of slavery, and no chip on their shoulders when they deserve to have a chip. Some recent immigrants have more of a chip on their shoulders than black Americans did immediately after slavery. No, that was the Christian influence. And advancing by leaps and bounds, going through the immigrant experience. And then white liberals just shut it down, and they don't care what happens to black people. They just want a reliable Democratic voter. You make a good point. My grandmother's father was shot by some racist white folks down during those days. But yet, my grandmother had no hatred of white America or this country. She told us to work hard, do the right thing, and you'll be fine. Let me take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to tell the folks how to get the book. And Coulter is with me, folks. Back in a moment.
Left my heartache way behind, but the rain won't leave and the pain won't ease and the sun don't want to shine. Pour me something tall and strong, make it a hurricane before I go insane. It's only 12:30, but I don't care. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I love Tuesdays for so many reasons. One is that it is country and western day. It reminds me of growing up in Alabama when I was a little nappy-headed boy. I loved country and western music. That's the only thing we could get down on that plantation at one point. So thank you, Andre. Andre is more than a notion. Talking with my friend Ann Coulter, I mean, just a tough, good, real American. If we can create 10 more people like this, like Ann, we can save America tomorrow. It wouldn't take that much. Her brand new book, Mud, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama. And how can the folks get the book?
Well, since bookstores are hiding it, you can always get it on Amazon, but ask for it at the bookstores and force them to order it.
Yeah, that's right. Let me just ask, the first presidential debate is tomorrow. What do you expect?
Not as much as everyone else is. I mean, I think they're building this up too much, as everything has to be a make-or-break moment for Mitt Romney. I think it will be enough that Mitt Romney will show himself without the media filter.
Yeah.
And the undecideds who are unemployed and unhappy and see that the country is going in the wrong direction will probably be more comfortable with Romney. He's bright, he's articulate. So I'm not expecting, and the media, of course, will say he lost,
Yeah.
and they will say he's losing, but he is not. I think he will win. But I think the debates will be useful to get people comfortable with Romney.
Obama said recently, well, Romney is going to do well in the debate. I'm not all that great. Is that, what do you think his motive behind that?
Well, I think that is additional proof of my point that these polls are nothing but propaganda.
Yeah.
If the Obama administration believed the polls the media is putting out, they wouldn't need to so undersell his debate performance. He could just breeze on to the debate stage like he's walking on to Letterman. But they know the polls are fake. They're trying to depress the Republican vote by making people think that Romney is just a lost cause. He's losing. Don't bother voting Republican.
Yeah, I believe that. In your book, Mud, speaking of the media, you talk about how they influenced the 2008 election for the first black president.
Oh, yes. Most of the racial bullying was deployed against Hillary, interestingly enough, because they didn't really need to use it against McCain, which is why I anticipated that we'd be getting a lot more racial bullying this time around. Romney's going to be a tougher nut for the Obama campaign to defeat. He's an amazingly articulate Republican, and I love Republicans, but a lot of our politicians can't talk. Both Ryan and Romney can talk. They have no skeletons in their closet. They're bright, serious men. So definitely they're going to have to play the race card this time.
I wanted to ask you, Ann, do white liberals feel guilt, or because I know a lot of white conservatives feel guilt for black people and what they're into. Do white liberals feel guilt today, or is this something that they use now for their own personal gain?
Absolutely no guilt whatsoever. None whatsoever. They talk about being guilty as only as another way of flattering themselves. But no, they think they are the only people in America who aren't racist, or at least that's what they tell themselves. They don't know any actual black people. They move heaven and earth to keep their kids from going to school with black kids.
Yeah.
Unlike Republicans, I might add, who generally send their kids to public schools, like the great Judge Charles Pickering, who actually fought the Klan. And yet he was said to be bad on civil rights. He puts his whole family at risk prosecuting the Klan, sends his kids to public schools in Mississippi while, the Gores, the Clintons, even the Obamas, no, we'll send our children to lily-white private schools. And because Judge Pickering was not good on, yes, what's the civil rights issue of our day? Abortion. He was called bad on civil rights. That's what the Democrats mean when they talk about civil rights, abortion and gay marriage.
I know. In your book, Chapter 2, in Mug, you talk about innocent until proven white. And you bring up, you talk about the Civil War, but you also talk about the KKK in that they were Democrats or they came out of the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. As I quote the liberal historian Eric Foner in the book, describing the KKK as the militaristic arm of the Democratic Party. The Klan was originally formed to fight Republicans who were coming to the South after the Civil War to register blacks to vote.
Yeah.
And originally Republicans were the target. When it reconvened in the 20s and 30s, it was 100% Democratic. Often overlapping memberships, Democratic mayors would also be head of the local KKK. And it was Republicans who included in their platforms calls for anti-lynching legislation, anti-poll tax legislation, public accommodation legislation, endorsing Brown versus Board of Education, all through the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Right.
Demands for the military to be desegregated, for civil service to be desegregated, Democratic platforms would not breathe a word of this. And even as late as the 50s, Democrats were still running segregationists on their tickets.
That's right.
They have an ugly history, and they make up for it by going around and accusing everyone but themselves of racism.
What's so amazing about that is that the Democrats have been able to switch it, pretend that the Republicans have done this, and they are getting away with deceiving the people. It's mind-blowing to me.
Yes. I mean, in my book, Treason, I told the true story of Joe McCarthy, by the way, a great integrationist. All the Democratic segregationists hated Joe McCarthy. They were liberal on all the issues of their day, right up to Bob Byrd, the longest-lived of the Democratic segregationists, who was not just a segregationist, but a recruiter for the Klan.
Yeah.
And guess what? He had a 100% rating from NARAL Pro-Choice America. So do not believe the lie that these were conservative Democrats. No, they were very liberal. But anyway, I mean, rewriting the history of McCarthy and McCarthyism, I mean, that was just 5 years of American history. When it comes to civil rights and race relations, they've written 200 years of history.
Amazing. We have about 2 or 3 minutes left here. When did blacks used to be Republican? Nearly all of them were Republicans at one point.
Yeah.
There were black congressmen and senators and all kind of good stuff. When did it change?
In the North, it changed with FDR, using the Democratic technique of what is called Irish welfare, giving blacks and the Irish government jobs, so that black progress is tied to the growth of the government. The government is seen, as the great white father.
Yeah.
And in Southern blacks switched through the scam of the first civil rights legislation ever pushed by a Democrat, LBJ pushing the 1964 Civil Rights Act. You would think that was the only civil rights act there ever was. LBJ himself had opposed Eisenhower's 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Act, and as I say in my book, LBJ boasted after pushing the 64 Act, which was mostly supported by Republicans, far more than Democrats, because we always support civil rights. He boasted that after this act, he'd have those N-words voting Democratic for the next 200 years, and he didn't say N-word.
Well, your book, Mud, it really lays all that out. It's a very, very good book, and I highly recommend it. Do you have a website, anything you want to give out? AnnCoulter.com,
and I'm also on Twitter at Ann Coulter.
I love the way you took on the ladies on The View. It was like watching Muhammad Ali take down the house. You did an excellent job on that.
Thank you. Such an honor to talk to you.
All right. Thank you, my friend. God bless you.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Back in a moment, folks.
I'm not the type